Hi, everybody. Today, we are going to be focusing on what insight is, how it can help you grow as a person, and what tools you can use to start developing insight today. We are joined once again by Sadie, who we learned about in our last episode, and we really dived deep. I am excited to process with you. So, thank you for listening in, and let's see if we can create some insight today. And as a quick disclaimer, there is some swearing in this podcast episode today, so do with that what you will. Hi, Sadie.
Hello.
How's it
Thanks
going?
for having me again. Good.
Uh, for our 8 listeners, Sadie and I are
Woo.
both very tired today because we went on separate camping trips, but we care so much about this podcast that we are still here.
Plus, our schedules are very busy, so this was a good time.
Our schedules are really busy. This is the time to do it. We had no option in the matter. If we wanted to do it, it was now. So today we are going to try to answer the question, what is insight? I've got some formal definitions that I'm going to read out, and then we're going to process what we think about them, what fits, what might be missing, the nuance of it all, and what that looks like in our lives. Any thoughts before I start reading verbatim what
I
definitions
don't
are?
think so. I think I'm ready to hear what you've got.
Okay, perfect. So we've got 2 different definitions. The first is from the American Psychological Association, and they define insight as the clear and often sudden discernment of a solution to a problem, often by means that are not obvious and may never become so. So in simple terms, it's an aha moment or an epiphany. Then the second definition is by the National Institute of Health, Library of Medicine, which discusses insight in relation to psychiatry and illness. And they define it as people's understanding of their condition, but also how their condition affects their interactions with the world. So in a broader sense, you can think of insight as an understanding of who you are and how you react or interact with everyone and everything around you. What are your initial thoughts or reactions to
My
those?
initial thoughts are like, those feel like two very different definitions.
Yes, right?
Like,
Like the first one is like, you don't understand it, but here you go, you have a connection. And then the second one's like, it's how you understand it.
yeah, I think they're both valid in their own ways, but it's just like interesting that it's like, yeah, they just feel like they're almost describing different things. It feels, even though I do agree that they both have to do with insight. The first one almost feels more like intuition than like insight per se, because it's like this like sudden knowing, or you're like, I don't know how I know, I just know. Um, which is like I feel like is often a valid way of like receiving info or making, decisions or whatever. And then the other one is, yeah, this like this I think that's the important part is like the understanding of your condition or like your thoughts or your behaviors. But I think maybe the second one, like the first one feels like sometimes a means to get to the second one. It's like given this aha moment
Mhm.
that gives you insight into like a deeper understanding of whatever it is you're going through.
Yeah, so they tie together, but they are very different ideas of what insight is.
Yes. It also almost feels like they're like capturing different parts of insight, like a different
Yes.
stage.
That's what just came to my mind as well. Of that first one, that aha moment is the active act of getting insight in that moment
Hmm.
versus this is what happens when you have insight.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So I'm gonna expand on that. And because as I was researching insight for this episode, I couldn't help but tie what we discussed last episode to that idea of intuition, which you brought up. So we are on the same wavelength. That idea of
Woo.
connecting to your body, listening to your inner voice, and being able to look at what feels right and move in that direction. So sometimes you might not know why it feels right, but it does. And sometimes you might be able to consciously say, this speaks to my values. This is what's important to me. This is why I'm going to move into this direction. And so we might not know where to look or how to pay attention to the information. And then we might not find that aha moment. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if you don't slow down and pay attention to your intuition, you might not get the insight down the road.
Yes,
What?
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think so sometimes you can have insight in like a retrospective way of being like, oh, I
Mhm.
was like, that's what that was earlier. It's just like you didn't get it implemented or like see what would have happened. It's just kind of like an after the fact of being like, oh, that's why that popped in my head, or that's why I was like thinking about that, or
Mhm.
that's why I was doing that, but like, or why I wanted to do that, but I ignored it. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes you can still have insight from it, but it's just like, yeah, that insight's like that actual like acknowledging and like implementing and like further understanding piece.
So to expand on that, I have more data for you. So the APA shared several different theories for how insight is formed and what kinds of insight can exist. So one of the examples, two psychologists in the 1990s, Dr. Sternberg and Dr. Davidson, proposed three different kinds of insight. Uh, the first is selective encoding insights. I don't expect either of us to remember these terms, by the way.
Okay, great.
Selective encoding insights, which is pulling relevant information from irrelevant information. Like this makes no sense. Boom, there's a connection. The second is selective comparison insights, which is what information do you already know that can be useful to your current situation? So pulling from past experience to help inform your current situation. And then the third one is selective combination insights, which is looking at everything that's available to you and trying to find a solution. So it's like, okay, what do we know? What are we working with? What can I do with this?
Okay.
And so the thing that ties all of these together and why I shifted into all of this information is it's all about looking at the information you have, whether it's irrelevant information and you gather something from it, whether it's information from your past and looking at how it can help you now, or just looking at everything and seeing if anything sticks. It all involves a willingness to look at the
Yes.
information. And if you're not willing to see what's there, no matter where you're pulling it from, you're not going to make those connections.
I would totally agree with that. So like, yeah, you insight, I mean, it can happen somewhat spontaneously, but I think in my experience, most of the time it's like, yeah, being open or even like actively seeking out more info.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just the ability, even if it's not intentional, but kind of an openness. Like, I want to figure this out. I want to understand. I want to know what to do next. Even that simplistic idea of I want to know what can come next, you might get insight.
Yeah, I was just thinking of trying to think of like if there has been a time where I've like had some version of insight but like wasn't ready or wasn't
Mhm.
willing or open. And I think like it's still possible to get those little like kind of like that first definition from the very beginning of like that aha moment. I think it's possible to have that, but then if it just stops there, like, because you're like, actually, I don't want to know anymore.
Mhm.
I'm not ready for that. Um, then yeah, it's just kind of like an interesting thing of like, is that still insight?
I'm so excited right now because I swear to God, you're reading my mind.
Okay.
Um, so the big insight that I had about my life is I don't really get big insights.
Ooh,
I
okay.
don't really have big aha moments. And I think there can be different levels of insight. You can have the big aha moment, but I think you can have like tiny little small baby insights and they
Oh
just
yeah.
build, right? And so I kind of talked about this in my first episode when I talked about myself, but that I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my education. It's like psychology was right, so I'm just going to go in that direction, but I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I don't know if I'm ready for grads or PhD program right now. I'll try working. I don't really like working. I guess I'll just try private practice. And it just kept moving in a direction of like, that kind of seems right. I guess I'll go there. And I really like where I've ended up, but I had no plan to be here. You know,
That's life.
it was very much I'll give it a try and we'll see how I feel. And then I'm just here. Um,
Yeah.
and so when I was trying to prep for this episode, my brain was like, oh, Sadie was talking about this big aha moment where you knew abdominal therapy was right for you. And it was just in that moment and it felt right. And I couldn't think of a single moment where that had happened for me. I just couldn't. And that whole like 100% yes versus 100% no that we were talking about last episode, I have a lot of 100% no's that have like built over time in my life, but I couldn't think of a 100% yes bigger than like, yes, I want pizza tonight, you know? And
Of course it would be pizza.
of course it would be pizza. You know me. For those that are listening and don't know me, I love pizza.
I think that was really unclear. I think you should talk more about your love for pizza.
I love pizza so much. And as I get older, I am finding I have limits with pizza, but those limits did not exist for a really long time. And my limits with pizza are ordering from two separate pizza places twice in one day, which I have done multiple weekends in a row this past summer. And I'm learning that's too much pizza for me in one go. But I still did it multiple times. It's fine. I love pizza. But back on track. um I sat with that for a while, that realization. And I talked to my partner, Elliot, about it. And I realized that I might have had those yeses in the past, but I didn't know how to trust it
Hmm.
because I was very much taught to never put all your eggs in one basket. Never think 100% this is the direction I want to go. Because what if there's something else that's better? What if there's something else that's more logical? What if that could fail? Why don't you have a plan B? And so I was constantly, in a good way, in a loving way, in a supportive way, taught to question all of it, including my own choices.
That's interesting.
And so I think I struggle to trust my own intuition.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So even if I've had big insight moments in my past, my brain instantly shuts off that big moment and turns it into yeah, we should really look into that more. Let's do some research. Let's weigh all of our options. Let's see if that is the direction we actually want to move in or not.
It sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. I was plagued with terrible anxiety for the majority of my life. And I've worked very hard on trusting my intuition more. Um, and so in all of this, and the part where I'm really excited is while I was going through this outline this morning to prep for today, at the same time, and well, same time in conjunction, I was also emailing with my EMDR supervisor because I'm working on my advanced certification. And I remembered I actually have had one big aha moment in my life,
Woo!
which was when I was going through my basic training and my brain went, you have to teach this to people.
Nice.
You need to become some form of teacher. And that's why I'm working towards my consultation certification in EMDR because of an aha moment. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's the thing that I have been wanting to talk to you about for like 2 weeks, but we've been too busy and I haven't been able to talk to you about it.
true.
It was very exciting for me to one realize that lack of trust in myself, and then two realize that last year I trusted myself and I'm so happy that I did. Um, but it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. What I think is interesting is we have this idea too. I think of like the only insight or intuition that's valid is like for like the positive of like absolutely yes, when it's like the no's are also just as valid.
So valid.
Yeah. And like learning to trust the no's too. So yeah, that's really interesting. It's like, yeah, there's just like so many, it's such like a surprisingly complex and multi-layered idea.
Mhm. There's so many different ways to have insight. It isn't just, this is the best idea in the world. I have to do that.
Yeah. And I think even like the idea of like, it's interesting because I think it's like my big aha moment, with like the abdominal therapy. It's like, so I followed that, but now it's like, and now I want to go in a different direction slightly, but that doesn't make like the past insight wrong, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that it's like, oh, well, this is a sign or whatever, like this is what I have to do, or else it's like still such a fluid and flexible thing because it's like you might get new insights in the future that take you in a different direction or new needs in your life or whatever. And so it's like this interesting thing of how you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about like you were taught to not trust any of it, where it's like, well, you can have a 100% yes, and that doesn't, it's not written in stone.
Yeah, it's not concrete. It's more of a 100% yes, move in that
Yeah.
direction, not do that thing.
Or even like 100% yes for right now.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's still like those aha moments, I think, still come with this level of, I don't know, I think like the easiest thing to have is to hold them with a certain level of like flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And be willing to question it down the line if it doesn't feel right anymore.
yeah.
And my brain is actually tying this to romantic relationships.
Ooh.
And I mean, I guess other relationships too, but often because we chose to start dating this person, we then just decide, well, this is who they are and I've picked them and I'm just going to deal with this. And sometimes that works, but for the most part, we all grow as people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're like, well, I picked this person, so I have to be with them. It's like, well, you're you picked them then, but you have to continue to pick them over time. And you
Yeah,
have to be willing to slow down and look at it and go, are we the same people? No, probably not, depending on how
yeah,
long you've been together. But who we are now, do they work together?
yeah,
Can we continue to be together? Do I still want to be together? It doesn't have to be you make the choice once and then you're stuck with it.
yeah. Like flexibility. You can always change your mind.
Flexibility.
Yeah. I was actually talking to a friend about this earlier today of like in dating, and it's like sometimes like there can be so much guilt of like if you go in with like saying or whatever, like communicating in some way, like these are things I value, this is what I'm open to, this is what I like, this is, like whatever. And then over time, like your needs change or your values change. Like sometimes it can come with a sense of guilt of like, well, this isn't who I said I was. This isn't, I told them I was
Mhm.
something else and now I'm this. And it's like so interesting that
Right.
have this expectation of ourselves, but also of like romantic partners that like they are gonna stay the same and that they're not gonna change.
I intentionally went into my current relationship having the conversation of this is who I am right now, but I know I will change and I will continue to change for as long as and after we are together if this doesn't work out. And also the other way of I know you are going to change. And I do not expect you to stay the same person that you are right now. I want to get to know this person. But if we stay together, I'm excited to get to know every other version of you too.
Yeah, I love that.
And every time we have a new idea or a new insight or a new value we want to focus on, we always pause and we're like, I'm excited to get to know this version of you.
Oh, this is I just like got goosebumps.
Isn't it adorable? And I just being able to start a relationship around that conversation of like, we're not going to be the same person 5 years from now.
Yeah,
I feel so stable in it because I know I'm allowed to change.
yeah,
Not that, he wouldn't let me, but more like within myself, I've given myself permission to be flexible.
yeah, which is so important.
Mhm. All right. So now that we've talked about the definitions and insight and all the different ways insight can show up in our lives, I want to talk a little bit more about being able to notice that insight. And we've talked about being flexible. We've also talked a little bit about being present, being able to notice in the moment that
Hmm.
something is happening. And one thing I don't think we've said yet is this idea of staying curious, being willing to question it, not necessarily in a don't trust it way, but more of a seeing where it goes, seeing what your reactions
Hmm.
are, being able to be curious about whatever does happen, whether it's a yes or a no. And not necessarily assuming what the answer is because of who you think you are and what you want. Um, Now, when I am working with clients, it usually comes up in the first session or two. Very rarely does it get into session 3. This is like basic level 1 stuff, which is great because this is episode 3. So, right at the start, I always say that there's 3 steps when we're having a reaction to something. First, you have to let it exist. You have to notice what the pattern is. You have to be aware. Step 2, you have to notice your reaction to whatever's going on. And then step 3 is deciding what to do about it. As humans, we don't like feeling uncomfortable. So a situation happens, we feel uncomfortable, and we skip past the first 2 steps and go immediately into how can I fix this to make this feeling go away?
Hmm.
And that process of slowing it down into those separate steps as opposed to one big step so everything feels better means coming at that situation with curiosity. Well, what is happening? Let me look at this for a second. What am I doing with this? How is my body feeling in this moment? Okay, well, now what can I do about it now that I know what is actually happening? What are your reactions to that, Sadie? You're just staring at me very intensely, like,
Sorry.
yes, yes.
I'm like very tired, and I was like, hmm. Uh,
So you just completely spaced out, missed everything I said.
yeah.
I'm over here making profound revelations, and you're just like, oh, the sky is kind of blue today.
No, it's actually very blue. No,
Oh, very blue. My bad. I am not where you are,
yeah,
so
obviously different sky.
I don't know.
Um, oh my gosh. Now I'm like so sidetracked. Let's see.
Step 1, letting it exist.
Letting
Step
it
2,
exist.
noticing your reactions. Step 3, then deciding what to do about it instead of going straight into fix it mode.
I think my brain was going to like my most recent thing that I'm like, oh, that's very relevant to my life. Um,
Okay.
well, this,
Please share if you feel
yeah.
comfortable.
So like my most recent thing that I'm like working with my therapist on is like whenever I'm really stressed, specifically about money, I
Mm.
impulsive shop, which
Oh.
exacerbates my stress around money. Um, and so
Mhm.
yeah, I was just thinking of like, yeah, when I get really stressed, I like want to immediately feel better and like fix it. So the way to like alleviate it is to just go shop. But then obviously that doesn't work super long term. Um, and so I was just thinking of like the process of like the question of like, well, how am I relating to that part of myself? And like how, um, yeah, like why do I hold judgment around this? Why, you know? And so it's
Mhm.
really fostering that like curiosity piece. And also just thinking like how in real life applying this, it sounds so neat and like nice and clean and just like, oh, an easy process.
It's not. It
And
is so
it
messy.
is so messy and also just like being uncomfortable, like choosing, not like
Mhm.
I'm gonna suffer for the sake of suffering, but like choosing to sit with your like being uncomfortable
Mhm.
is not easy. And sometimes it's like,
No.
nope, I can't do that today.
Yeah. So you definitely don't have to go there, but for the sake of using this as a tangible example, so you were saying, like, why am I feeling this way? Why is this happening? That's still, in a way, you trying to figure out what's wrong so you can fix it, as
Right.
opposed to sitting in it and letting it exist.
Yes, that's also
Right. So
part of it.
trying to understand why, okay, that's one thing versus, okay, I am feeling
Yeah.
this. I am feeling anxious about finances right now. What triggered it? What does it feel like to be anxious about it? What thoughts are coming up around it? Let me not try to understand why
Yeah.
for a second. Let me just feel this discomfort of the anxiety around finances.
Are you asking for my response?
No, I was
Okay.
more just letting it sit.
Sorry.
You
You
don't
can cut
necessarily,
that part.
no, I'm keeping it in actually because it's very real,
Dang it.
right? The fact that I was like, this is what that might look like if you choose to do it. And your brain was like, do I have to?
Do I have?
Real life examples, people. We also get uncomfortable, even though we are on a podcast about sitting in discomfort. Our bodies don't respond. In fact, where my brain jumped during that pause was the last time I was anxious about finances.
Nice.
And I didn't, I understand why I'm anxious and I'm
Mhm.
actively making steps to try to figure out how to feel a little bit more stable in my finances. Because having a job based solely on other people showing up during summer season is very hard.
Yeah.
And my brain reacting to that discomfort and also knowing the answers and knowing that I'm working on it, but still feeling uncomfortable, my brain decided to tell me, well, you're not good enough. That's why you're
Yeah.
anxious. You're not doing it right. In fact, you're probably going to fail all of this, even though I've been doing this for years and have not failed yet. Like it just went, you're anxious. You're already doing everything you can to fix it, but you're still anxious. So clearly you're messing up,
Obviously.
obviously. So that's how my brain deals with discomfort, which is not very nice.
Not.
Um, so in all of that, in your reaction of like, nope, I'm just gonna disappear, pretend this isn't a problem, my brain going, you suck. Uh
Well, no, but then my brain doesn't say like, oh, like you're gonna fail at your business. It's like you're gonna bankrupt yourself and then you're gonna be homeless. It's like there,
fun. So the spiral continues.
yeah. Well, and I'm also very practiced at jumping from A to Z, like going from
Mhm.
like, oh, I bought a $20 tapestry that I didn't need to homeless. Um,
Which is very
there
unrealistic
there
when
are
you
a
look at
few
it.
steps in between that
Just
I'm
a little.
missing. But yeah,
So what you're saying is instead of jumping from A to Z, We need to slow down.
Got it.
Let it exist. Notice your reactions and then figure out what to do about it. Even if figuring out what to do about it is recognizing that you already are doing everything and you are in fact okay right now.
Yeah. And I'm just
Because
like,
we are
oh,
actually okay.
yes, we're doing fine.
Um, this is reminding me of the dichotomy between the crisis work that I used to do and private practice that I do now.
Yeah.
Because in crisis work is very much let me get you to tomorrow. They couldn't think past that
Yeah.
because they're spiraling. I'm going to be homeless, or maybe they already are homeless. I don't know, whatever their situation was. But it was very much let me calm you now. Let me help you find a solution now. Let me help you survive.
Yeah.
Versus in private practice, the majority of my clients have jobs, have families, have hobbies, travel all the time, are very high functioning. And so the type of work we do isn't necessarily survival. It's, well, who do you want to be?
Yeah.
How do you want to show up in the world? What can this look like for
How
you?
do you
There's
connect to
so much.
intuition?
How do you connect to intuition? What are your values?
Yes.
We are able to dive so much deeper, but at the same time, they jump from A to Z.
Hmm.
They don't slow down. It's always, well, I just need to be better at all of this now. And most of my job is slowing it down of, okay, yeah, sure. You want to work out every day of the week. That's great. You haven't worked out in 6 months. How about we start with once and see how it goes?
Yes. It's fine. It's something I always like. I feel like I try to convince everyone to go to therapy. Like that's just like whenever I'm talking to people, like, have you ever gone to therapy? You might try it out. But they're always like the number one response I get is like, well, I don't want to have to like deal with everything. Like I don't want to have I'm not ready to talk about XYZ. I'm not ready. I don't want to look at this part. I don't want to and it's like you don't have to do everything. Like you're not
Mhm.
if your therapist is like good at their job, they're not gonna take you to Z your first session. They're gonna like start you at the beginning.
In fact, unlike a lot of therapists, from what I'm told, when I do intakes for sessions, if someone tells me about something really hard or really traumatic, I will purposefully stop them before they give details.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope, thank you for telling me that it happened. You don't know me well enough for me to feel comfortable with you going into those details. I will hear it. I am ready to hear it, but I want to make sure you're ready too. And I don't want you to push yourself on day one.
Nice.
And I've had several clients thank me for that after the fact of like, I didn't know what you were talking about. And I thought you were crazy. And then I realized that I wasn't ready to talk about it. And I would have just like trauma dumped on you. And I'm so glad that you paused. And now here we are 4 months later, and I'm actually talking about it in a real way,
Yeah.
in small details that feel safe so that I can build up to the big details.
That's awesome.
I know, I love it. And that was definitely not my intention necessarily
Yeah.
of how that has turned out for them and how it has given them insight in their lives. But I love that they shared that with me because now I have even more intention around don't give me the details right away.
Yeah.
I really just wanted to make sure we had rapport and they were able to not fully dissociate in the moment. And it's like, actually, you feel so safe and you can regulate yourself. And
And you have
oh,
skills
they
around
slowed
this.
down.
And also probably like less of that like vulnerability hangover that happens when you like spill everything to like a stranger.
Yeah, you feel safe.
Yeah.
Your body knows you're safe, which means when you share, you don't instantly get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Mhm. Now, everything we're talking about, being curious, staying flexible, slowing down, having a safe person to talk to, which also came up last week, this idea of having a safe person. It all, in my mind, ties back to this idea of in practice, what does that even look like? Right? What does it mean to slow down? What does it mean to be flexible? What does it mean to be curious? How do you sink deeper? It's all great when you're just saying it, but bringing actual tangible, this is something you can start trying, is a very different conversation.
Yeah.
And so I want to give a quick disclaimer to whoever is listening that this is a very brief conversation today. And I want to spend more time in future episodes discussing any and all ideas that we come up with today, and also any ideas we have in the future at length. So if it resonates with you, but we don't dive deeper, you wish you heard more, please subscribe or like this because you'll probably hear about it more. And if it doesn't resonate with you right now, that's okay, because we will describe it in different ways. We will use different language. We will have different ideas. And with each new form of language that we use, you might find that aha moment later. So, with that, I'm going to just ask you this question, knowing that I already have an answer in my head of what
Okay.
I would say it is. But I'm curious what comes up for you. What does being present mean? And how can one start being present in their day-to-day life?
I think for me, it's like it's hard not to define it by saying like it's not this, but to like say what it actually is. I think it's for me feeling like embodied, so like knowing the sensations in
Mm.
my body, which also for me like part of that includes like being aware of like what's happening in the moment or in conversation with people without having these thoughts about like the future or even this like really overwhelming internal monologue of like trying to read their mind, being like, oh well, they gave me a weird look, so they're judging, or in the past this happened. I think it's like like we said, slowing it down, and it's taking in whatever is going on in your environment or in your body or in relation with other people.
Okay, I love that. Embodiment. To expand on that, I've always thought of being in the present moment or being mindful as allowing yourself to be right here, right now,
That's
with
a much
whatever that experience
that's a much
is.
simpler way to phrase what I just said.
Well, I had more time to think about this than you did. I really like putting you on the spot. It's great for me. I sound so smart.
You're like, actually, I
Uh,
just do this to make myself look good, and you look like a bumbling fool.
but also, to be fair, you do body work more than therapy, and I do therapy more than body
Yes,
work. And so I talk about these topics all the time with my clients. I'm just suddenly doing it in front of a
that's
microphone.
fair. So you already had the
Uh,
answers ready to go. That feels like cheating.
no, it is a little bit, but you can always do these outlines and be in charge of all of this with your crazy schedule.
You're doing
Just kidding. I'm
great.
not going to let you. You need to focus on your business and grad school, and you can do this later.
Yeah, you're doing great.
It's my job right now. Thanks. I appreciate it. Feel a little bit like I'm flailing, but we're figuring it out. I'm really hoping it just comes across as like cute relatability.
Yes,
Like, oh, she panics too.
everyone panics.
Yes. But anyway, being in the here and now, in this moment, right where you are, that could be being in your body. How does my body feel? It feels really hot. What does being hot feel like? Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Being able to check in with yourself, but also being able to check in with your environment.
Hmm.
And where that goes for me is, yes, you can try to be present every second of every day, but that's too fast. That's too big.
Yeah.
If you are learning, that's a lot to expect of yourself.
Yeah, also that's like if you don't have the skills
Yeah.
built up around that, like sometimes the present can be a lot.
It's so overwhelming sometimes. So, slowing down, making it smaller, making it more tangible would be things like before I get out of every shower, I take a second to notice what the water feels like on my body.
Yeah.
It, like when it hits the top of my head and runs down my scalp, I notice that. Or, so another example was when I went camping this weekend. I was exhausted. Is the end of the day. I was overstimulated from the past week and I hadn't yet figured out how to slow down. And I was on this walk with Elliot and we were literally talking about that. How it's like, I feel like I can't slow down. I feel like this anxiety is just pouring out of me. I can't be in the moment right now. It is terrible. Basically, I can't be present. I can't be mindful. And then he paused and he was like, okay, but look at that real quick. And I turned around and there was this beautiful mountain with all of the greenery from all the rain we've had in Colorado. And the sun was setting. So the shadows just made the different textures on the rock really defined. And it was like everything stopped. I couldn't think about all of the anxiety in that moment because I was just so present
Mhm.
with what that mountain looked like. And I felt myself exhale.
Yeah.
And then I went right back to being anxious.
I also,
Like
oh, sorry, go ahead.
pockets. I was gonna say it's just those little pockets
Yeah.
matter to me in being present.
I also, what keeps coming to mind for me too is like, also, I think sometimes like this conversation of like being present or being mindful is held up as like this, like, I don't know, gold star, like accomplishment or, like something. And if you don't do it or you're not able to do it, that like somehow that like reflects poorly on you or
Mhm.
like you're not good enough. And it's like that's not at all like what we're saying. And I also was thinking of, this doesn't, and like we're both people who we don't have chronic pain. We don't have I mean like, we have our experiences with various like mental health struggles. But like there are other experiences that we have not had that like make that significantly more challenging. And that like even with things like post-traumatic stress disorder, like sometimes being present can actually be really triggering. And so
Mhm.
I think like that's also an important thing to bring in is like we're not saying like the goal might not even be to like be present 100% of the time for everyone or even anyone. Um, but just like finding
Mhm.
those moments, like looking at the mountain where like everything just kind of quiets and like you're able to like
Yeah.
be there fully.
Yes, I love that of just finding what your moment is that you want to try to be present in.
Yeah.
And for something tangible, it can be different for everyone.
Hmm.
It might be the next time you take a shower. If you really like showers, try to be present for what that feels like for you. Or if you like being in nature, anytime you are outside, see if you can notice if birds are chirping.
Or even like laying in your
Yeah.
bed and just like really appreciating how fluffy your pillows are. Like,
I was gonna say, if you're sitting on the couch because you love watching movies, just take a moment and appreciate whether you like that movie or not.
yeah. Yeah.
There's so many ways to be present, and you can find the one that fits for you. It doesn't have to match what me being present looks like.
Yeah, and it can all like it'll also most likely grow and change over time the more you're engaging in that because it's like then it's at least in my experience is like then it's like well I crave that feeling so it's like I'm more
Yeah.
likely to seek out those like those moments where it's like oh I can just like
Yeah.
be with this for a minute and it feels good and it becomes a little bit more automatic and more natural rather than like this thing that I'm like forcing.
Yeah. And I want to expand a little bit on how sometimes we don't want to be present
Yeah.
because little bit meta, but I also think you can be present with the fact that you don't want to be present in that moment.
Yes.
And I am so grateful that I don't have chronic pain anymore, but I did have those chronic headaches for like a decade,
Yeah. And I
to
did
the
too,
point where
but at this point it's
yeah,
like,
we're,
yeah.
it feels
And
normal.
also at that time I didn't have any awareness of any of these practices, so I wasn't even like
Yeah.
trying to navigate like presence with migraines. It was
Mhm.
like I just had migraines.
Yeah. I just had to take a nap before I drove home every day because my headache was so bad I physically couldn't drive
Yeah,
safely.
exactly.
Like it's just normal.
It's
It's fine.
normal.
And again, I didn't have these practices at that time either, or at least not in that way. But if I was going to take that as an example,
Hmm.
my headaches, they would get so bad that it's like I physically didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
I wanted to check out, and I would find anything that would allow me to check out and not be present and focus on literally anything else than what my experience was.
Yeah.
And so, with that meta idea of being present about the fact you don't want to be present, if I was going to try to do that, and if any of our listeners want to try to do that, that might look like saying, "Oh, I hate this. I do not feel good. I am going to go distract myself right now," as opposed to just being on autopilot
Yeah.
and distracting, actively making the choice presently,
Yes.
intentionally, consciously distracting.
Yes. I like that.
Now, is there anything you think we've missed today around insight, around slowing down, around being curious and flexible? Any other tangible tools you wish we could share?
That's such like a hard one because I feel like there's
I
so many
know.
different like there are thousands of different ways of approaching it. So, like how can we possibly even scratch the surface? Uh um I think like one thing that for me as far as like slowing down and what that looks like is having built towards the skill of like when I am really like either distressed or upset about something or just like dysregulated. Um, Building up to the having the skill to be like, ooh, I am feeling really bad right now, or I'm feel like, but even in that moment of being like being able to pause, like being able to pause in the middle of like this current that's going, you're like down the river and it's just like taking you, and you're just like, this is crazy, I'm being swept up, but then having the skill to be like, wow, I am on a wild ride right now. Um,
Even being able to identify the fact that you are on that ride or you're on autopilot.
yeah, is like a huge step, and that also, while it sounds easy, also takes so much time and practice of practicing in these other times when, it is like a beautiful sunset or it's a really great song. It's like these things that you really enjoy and that you want to soak in, then gives you, like, as you do that more, it builds towards being able to do that in these, like, really intense moments of being able to be like, whoa, actually, I'm being carried away right now. And sometimes you can still be like, and forward, we're gonna go. I have no way to stop this.
I'm not stopping it, but I'm aware that I am doing
But
it.
I at least know it's happening. Whereas before I didn't even know it was happening. It was just taking me away. So it's yeah, it's such a, like a an interesting
I
process.
love
Yeah.
I love that concept because being able to pause during the good stuff not only allows you to practice
Hmm.
so that it feels a little bit easier and more doable when you're trying to be present during the stuff that doesn't feel good, but also starting with the stuff that feels good or feels comfortable and feels safe builds up resilience in your nervous system
Yeah.
and allows you to realize, because you're being present with it, that the good stuff does exist.
Hmm.
Because if you're just on autopilot for all of it and you're never present, then when the bad stuff happens, your brain basically tells you this is it forever. You will never feel any other
Yeah.
way ever again. You are screwed.
Your life is chaos. You're going
You're
to be
never going to feel
homeless.
good again. But if you pause in the good moments and you're actively present for them, then maybe, just maybe, over time, when you're feeling like shit and everything is in chaos, you can go, yeah, but I also know that those birds were really pretty this morning when
Hmm.
they were singing, and I felt really content then.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll feel content again in the future.
Yeah. And it's just,
Like,
yeah, I think slowing down is just like learning to pause, learning the art of pause.
learning the art of pause. Okay, I still actively think about getting a little pause button tattooed on my arm, just so that when I'm spiraling or feeling anxious or I'm doing so much that I feel like I can't slow down, it's like literal reminder to
Yes,
pause.
I like it.
Because slowing down is important and it builds. The more you let yourself slow down, the more you let yourself pause, the more you give yourself permission to do so when you feel like you can't.
Yeah.
Like I've reached the point that when I'm struggling to slow down, I go, this is so frustrating because I know slowing down will help me, but my body is on this river without a raft and I don't know how to get off to the edge.
You're like, but I want the pause.
I want the pause. The pause will help me.
And
The
maybe the
pause
pause is
will,
just being like, wow, the water in this river is really cold and really fast. Onward.
wow, I have this horrible tightness in my chest right now and I don't like it. All right, let's keep going.
And I think like it doesn't always have to, yeah. It's like, but it doesn't always have to be like, well, keep going. It's like, okay, I'm gonna breathe into that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be here for it.
yeah. I'm going to let that tightness in my chest exist, even though I don't want it to be there.
Yeah,
And you can have both at the same time. It
yeah,
doesn't have to be either or. You can recognize that it's there and that it is allowed to be there. And also, you hate it.
yeah. And I think like taking it even further is like then you can also like turn to that part of you that hates it with like compassion and love and be like, thank you so much for like alerting me to how uncomfortable this is.
You also get to exist, even though that it's not going away.
Yeah,
And you're going to continue to be upset about it.
yep.
Mhm. So, one of the things that we've talked about as we're wrapping up, I'm paying attention to the time, I
Yes.
promise. I won't keep you too much longer. We talked about, as we were brainstorming for this podcast, trying to tie in quotes
Oh, yes.
to our experiences. And I have a quote for this episode, and I want to share it now because we're talking very much about the duality of human experience. And the quote I have is by Oliver Wendell Holmes. And I don't know what ST is. I think it might be senior, but I wrote ST. So, like Oliver Wendell Holmes Street. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, the quote is
Maybe he's a sergeant. No, that'd be SGT. Never mind. Sorry, the quote is.
BST. The quote is, are you ready?
Yes,
Are you sure?
I'm so ready.
Pause for a second, please. A moment's insight is sometimes worth a life's experience.
Hmm.
Because if we are on autopilot, we are experiencing life without paying attention to it, without wanting to look at the information. But if we pause and we look at the information available to us, whether it's past experience, whether it's irrelevant information that we are going to bring into relevance, whether it's just whatever it is we are experiencing in the moment, being present and flexible, being able and willing to be curious and look at that information will allow us to take what we need from that life experience we've been on autopilot with.
Yeah.
I love it. You're just like, yep, we're just going to leave it there.
Yeah, we're gonna pause.
Uh, We're just going to
Pulling
pause.
it
Just
down.
let it sink in. So I'll end on this thought then.
Okay,
How's
great.
this sound? Okay. So we can learn, all of us can learn to sit with the uncomfortable. We can take that information in and learn and grow from it. And just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean you won't survive. In fact, our brains and our bodies are very good at helping us survive. We just have to be willing to sit in that discomfort. And if we do, maybe, just maybe, we can all find those aha moments and make a connection that wasn't previously there.
Yeah.
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 I love that. We should just end podcast episode with
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say.
yeah.
It's like that's gonna be the new sign off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Everybody that's listening, we're so sorry that just happened. I'm kidding. Hi, Udi. You are such a good boy. Yes, you are. Did you get any insight, Udi?
He's like, no, not really. I just really want to go outside now because it's hot.
His insight is that he doesn't want to be there right now, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Juliet gave up on me. She is down in the living room now. She's like, "You're still working? What is this bullshit?" This is all staying in, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
I can cut it out if you'd like.
I don't really care either way.
I think it's funny.
I was just like,
Again,
here's Ruby.
I'm just trying to be relatable and us just, chilling at the end. It's very relatable.
Yes. And the dog coming over being like, hey, give me some love. You've been talking for
Please
an
pay
hour.
attention. I'm not okay with this.
Yes.
I say I have my work time where I'm on Zoom with clients, and the second that time is over, Juliet knows. And she's like, "You are past time. If you need to keep working, get onto your laptop. You're not supposed to be on Zoom anymore." I thought she came back. She didn't. All right. Well, that's it. That's our episode.
Nice.
Everybody find something to be present with if you choose to work on that. And if you don't want to work on that and this sounded absolutely awful for you, be present with that.
And they're like, no.
I refuse. Wait, damn it. Does that mean I'm being present? You're caught. Now that you know the language, now that you know it's a thing you can do, you can't help but do it. Even if you don't want to.
Even every
You're
once in a
stuck in
while.
it now.
Yeah.
Every once in a while. But I'm going to go be present with my dog now because she has earned it. She's been such a good girl. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you
and
too.
Thanks for building insight with me.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
I really enjoyed processing with Sadie about what insight is, how sitting in discomfort and recognizing when we don't want to can help build insight, and the small steps we can take to start increasing our awareness. Hopefully, there was something you can take from today and build upon. If there was, let yourself sit with that idea for a little while longer. If you have any questions for this podcast or any themes you'd like us to focus on in the future, send us a message on Instagram at insightswithuspodcast or send us an email at insightswithus@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please follow, like, or subscribe and share it with your friends. I appreciate you, and I appreciate that you are listening. Thank you for creating insight with us.